Good morning, everyone. My name is George Mashour. I'm an anesthesiologist and neuroscientist here at the University of Michigan, and I serve as chair of the Department of Anesthesiology, and in 2014 founded the Center for Consciousness Science, which is now directed by Dr. Tony Hudetz, who I will invite up here in a moment. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to welcome you all, to express my gratitude to our speakers who have flown in from Europe and DC, some of our incredible faculty members who are speaking and participating from the University of Michigan. I want to thank Dr. Hudetz and Dr. Lee for their leadership of the Center for Consciousness Science. I want to thank Kathy and Dawn and Kate and Tara for their work in helping to assemble this. It's a lot of organization, and so I want to express recognition and gratitude for their work. Consciousness is a critically important topic. It has profound scientific implications, clinical implications, philosophical implications, ethical implications, theological implications, artistic implications, and ultimately existential implications. Because whatever your field is, whatever you work on, whatever you're interested in, as human beings, consciousness is what makes life meaningful. And today we are going to be discussing and hearing from leading experts about a very important topic within this field of consciousness science. It's really the beginning of a new science of near-death experiences. We have people who are at the vanguard. And so without further ado, again, I want to thank them. I want to thank you for being here and for participating with us in this moment. And I'd like to welcome up Dr. Tony Hudetz, who's the director of our Center for Consciousness Science. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Dr. Mashour. Yes, I will use the mic. It is my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, who is coming over from overseas, from Liège, Belgium, Dr. Charlotte Martial. Dr. Martial is a neuroscientist at the Coma Science Group, where she leads research projects on near-death experience. She has also been affiliated with the Center for Psychedelic Research at Imperial College London, UK, where she investigates the similarities between phenomenology of classic psychedelic experiences and that of near-death experiences. So more generally, Dr. Martial has done a great deal of work investigating the neural correlates of consciousness in various altered states, as well as disorders of consciousness in patients. Dr. Martial's work is internationally recognized. Her achievements are highlighted by many research awards and grants and a very extensive publication record, and in an unquestionably very important field. So it is my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Charlotte Martial. Thank you. Join me.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very nice introduction. Hello, everybody. I'm very, very glad to be here today to start this wonderful day on my favorite research topic, which is near-death experience. And I'm more than honored to have been invited. So I wanted again to thank you, Anthony, and you, George, and the whole team for inviting me at this wonderful day. So,
This one is. Is it on?
Yeah, it
Can
is.
you hear in the back?
Okay. I can speak louder, but okay. I will speak louder, and maybe I will stir on. Yeah. Okay.
But we're going to get reverb.
Okay. Should I use this? Is it better? Yeah, okay, let's use this. Sorry about that. So, I will first characterize near-death experience. So I will first describe what are those fascinating experiences, and then I would like also to describe, to my opinion, how near-death experience research can potentially impact model of consciousness. So before to study the phenomenon, we first need to define what we want to study. So what are near-death experience? So I like to define those fascinating experience as the subjective experience reported by people who have been close to death. So people who have been in a life-threatening situation may report those intense experience. And the particularity of NDE is that they contain some prototypical feature. So there are some recurring feature that we can find in most of the narrative. And among others, here are a few. So people usually report altered time perception, an intense feeling of peacefulness, despite the very frightening or stressful life-threatening situation. There is also this bright light that people may see, or they can also feel surrounded by this bright light. And sometimes people report that this light is at the end of a tunnel. There is also this intriguing experience, out-of-body experience, where the person has the impression that he is living his own physical body. We can also observe a meeting entity, be it a sensation of presence or rather people that may be deceased. We also have this sensation of this feeling of harmony, unity with the world, with the nature, and or with entity. And we can also see that people experience heightening senses. And notably, a particularity of this experience is that most of the people who experience NDE will report that these experiences are more real than reality. And so in research, we want to identify them and quantify it. So in the context of research, we can use standardized scale to quantify the phenomenology of NDE. And so in 1983, Professor Bruce Grayson developed one of the first standardized scale that were highly, were used in plenty of study. And recently with my colleague, we updated actually this scale based on the literature, but also we try to improve the psychometric property using, for example, a 5-point Likert scale, etc. And so basically the idea of this scale is that it contains 20 items which refer to the prototypical feature. And there is this cutoff score which permits, if we want, for example, in the context of research, to select the experience that are sufficiently rich to be included in the research. Of course, this cutoff score exists, but everybody who has experienced a subjective experience but did not reach this cutoff score is also very important, in particular in clinic. But in research, we can use this cutoff score. And so you have to know that today, there is actually no universally accepted definition of the phenomenon yet. But I like to define those experiences as a state of disconnected consciousness. So meaning here, a mental experience with prototypical mystical feature typically occurring to people who have been close to death or in situation of intense physical or emotional danger. So this is a common definition to define classical near-death experience. And before to go further, I would like to highlight some significant event, according to me, in the history of NDE. So, notably, the introduction of the term in French, expérience de mort imminente, by AIM, so near-death experience. A few years later, we can see the popularization of the term in English, notably due to the publication of the bestseller of Professor Moody, Life After Life, that you may have read. And so this is really there that we can see the beginning of research on the subject. And then we can see also creation of some international association aiming to collect narrative. And so there is this very famous ENDS association in America, but it exists also in Europe and other parts of the world, other association. Then the creation of the near-death experience scale by Professor Grayson was quite important because it has facilitated empirical research on the phenomenon. Then there is also other important events, such as the first publication highlighting that people may experience distressing near-death experience. Also, the first prospective study on the phenomenon, and then the identification of near-death-like experience. And we will see that together, but basically the idea is that we see more and more that people may report such a similar experience in non-life-threatening situations. Then, as I said, we updated the scale, which aimed to facilitate empirical research. And then I like to also highlight our recent paper aiming to situate NDE among consciousness framework. And we'll see that just after. So what's next? So I'm very excited about what is next, and I think I am very lucky to work on the subject because I think that currently we are in the middle of a boom of this field, and so this is really exciting as a researcher to work on the subject. Who can experience NDE? So could everyone potentially experience it in certain situations? So in short, research has shown that people who report NDE do not present deficit in global cognitive functioning or specific or present specific pathological trouble. There is also no susceptibility to false memory, and apparently, so far, research saw that factors such as social classes, education level, etc., gender, may not influence the emergence of NDE. However, it is worth mentioning that research has identified some characteristics that are considered as non-pathological in people who report NDE. Notably, we have identified fantasy proneness propensity. We also have shown that those people seems to have this tendency for dissociation and absorption. So basically, those people seem to have this facility, this propensity to experience dissociative state. So dissociative state can be daydreaming, but it can also be a propensity to be in an hypnotic state, for example. And so this is one of the major psychological theory that suggests that those people would be unusually sensitive to internal state and may possess a special propensity to pick up certain perceptual experience that others are blind to. Because this is important to mention that, of course, all research done on the subject is based on the memory, the recall of NDE. And so we don't know if people who don't recall NDE did experience NDE but did not recall it. So, of course, this is all based on memory. When can we experience NDE? In which context? So classical NDE are reported in life-threatening situation. It may be a very large range of contexts, such as cardiac arrest, coma, trauma. It can also be complication during surgery, etc. So there is a very large range of contexts in which people may experience NDE. And so you can see here the incidence found in a few prospective studies. So basically, we can see between 10 to 23% of cardiac arrest survivor reporting NDE. If we take intensive care survivor, so here including all type of condition, we can observe a percentage of 7%. Actually, I think that this is wrong, sorry, it's 15%. I should change my slide, sorry for that. And more generally, there is a few publications that show that about 5% of the general population may report NDE. But it is worth mentioning that only 7 or 8 publications are prospective study. So this is really limited, and of course there is a need for further prospective study. So for example, we don't know in general anesthesia condition the incidence or prevalence of NDE. And it is also very important to mention that about 15% of people who report NDE do experience distressing negative NDE. So one prototypical feature of NDE is this intense feeling of peacefulness. However, it is important to mention that some people may experience very frightening NDE. And so far, there is only 3 scientific publications on the subject. So this needs to be more studied for sure, but basically the publications show that there are kind of 3 types of NDE. So first, there is this void experience where the person experience an infinite void. So the person is just non-existence. This is reported as very frightening. Then there is this hellish experience where the person will meet monster everywhere. There are fire everywhere, and they experience very negative judgment by monster, etc. And then there is this third type of NDE, which we call inverse, just because actually this is experience containing the prototypical features such as out-of-body experience, bright light, etc. But this is associated to a very frightening negative emotion. So this is very important that research work on the topic, because to my experience in our database of NDE, I have a few people who experience frightening experience, and most of them actually were okay to share their experience with me. However, after having shared their experience, they told me that they don't want me to contact them anymore because this is so hard for them to talk about that. So my intuition is that some of them would have a kind of PTSD of this experience, and so it is obviously this is obvious that research needs to work on the topic, and clinicians also need to detect them in order to help those people. And Interestingly, we observe in our publication that in this sample of people who report a negative NDE, we observe a greater proportion of suicide attempt condition in this sample as compared to people who report a positive NDE. So this raises a lot of questions regarding the potential influence of the context and mental state. As I said at the beginning, more and more people report such a phenomenology in non-life-threatening situations. We call them near-death-like experience. And so the idea is that people can report that in also a very large range of conditions, such as meditation, an intense fever or anxiety, etc. And it can also be reported in psychedelic. And we will see that together too, because there is a nice link that we can do with psychedelic. And so basically, here is a graph where you can see the proportion the frequency of each prototypical feature in red in life-threatening classical near-death experience versus in blue here in non-life-threatening condition. And so you can see that there is no difference in terms of frequency of the prototypical features. This suggests that those two types of experience may be resembling. And so, of course, this raises interesting question about the proximity to death in the emergence of the phenomenon. And so I will focus here more on psychedelic because I think this is important because as a researcher, I am of course not there when people do experience NDE. And so psychedelic can be seen as a tool to study NDE in laboratory setting. I will explain you why we think that. And so I will take the first example of this study. So with my colleague, we wanted to study the potential similarity in terms of phenomenology between near-death experience and different types of substance, atypical but also typical psychedelic. So basically, we took about 600 NDE narrative, and we also took a sample of about 15,000 of narrative related to 165 substance. And the idea is that we use natural language processing in order to highlight this potential similarity in terms of phenomenology. So basically, the idea was that after analysis, we can observe the most frequently term in each category, in each substance category and in NDE. And so if we compare them, we were able to highlight the substance that most resemble NDE. And so you can see here a matrix containing the average similarity value between each substance category and NDE narrative. And so if we compare it, we can see that with the color that are more red, yellow, etc., we can see here the highest similarity. And so it is easy to see here that NDE report show the highest degree of semantic similarity with narrative of dissociative category and serotoninergic category. And if we take each substance distinctly, we can see here the range of the ranking of the substance from the lowest similarity with NDE to the highest similarity with NDE. And so if we focus on the most resembling substance that seem to induce a similar phenomenology to NDE, we can observe ketamine as the first one, then salvia divinorum, and then a series of serotoninergic drugs such as DMT, LSD, psilocybin, etc. So first, this kind of study can help us to establish some neurophysiological hypotheses about NDE. Because here we can do the hypothesis that at the proximity of death, some endogenous neurotransmitter can be released and help to emerge those phenomenology. And also, this can help to choose some substance that we could use in laboratory setting in order to prospectively study phenomenology that resemble NDE. This is also another glaring example on how psychedelic literature can permit to understand NDE. Because after reading psychedelic literature, I saw that one of the most common experience was this experience of ego dissolution. So here it's simply the idea that the frontier between the self and the environment is disturbed or fully effacé. Fully disappear. So this is interesting because after reading that, I was wondering to what extent some people who report NDE may experience that experience. And with my colleague of the Imperial College London and from the Coma Science Group, we did show that most of people who report NDE did experience this ego dissolution experience. And of course, this can be linked to the experience of unity or harmony with the environment or with the world, with the nature. And so very recently, a few publications have been published about the experience of ego dissolution, which was induced here notably with LSD. And so using fMRI, we can notably show that it seems that this experience of ego dissolution is associated with a reduced connectivity within the default mode network. So this is the kind of study that could help to understand NDE. And so here is the first placebo-controlled experiment in laboratory setting that try to use a substance as a model for near-death experience. And so my colleagues from the Imperial College London use DMT in healthy participants in laboratory setting, and they prospectively collected their narrative. And then we compare what those participants experiences with some narrative of our database, NDE database. And we compare here, again, you can see as before, the frequency of a prototypical feature. In blue, it is the experience from participant of the study. And then in red, it's a classical NDE. And again, here we can see a high overlap between the phenomenology with only one feature, which is the experience of border, point of no return, that is different. So basically, this study show that here there is a great overlap between the phenomenology induced by DMT versus in NDE context. Where is this happening in the body? So before to talk about the neurophysiological mechanism, I like to present this graph, this figure permitting to situate the experience among different non-ordinary state of consciousness or altered state of consciousness. And so here we reduce consciousness to three components. So first there is wakefulness, which refer here as to eyes opening and is mediated by brainstem. Then we have the component of connectedness, which here refer to the connection to the external world, allowing a potential experience of external stimuli. And then internal awareness, which refer here to all environmental stimuli independent thoughts, such as mental imagery or mind wandering. And so Here we can see that those three components are at the highest level when we are awake and conscious. At the opposite, we can see that those three components are highly reduced when we are, for example, in a coma without dream, or general anesthesia without dream or any kind of response. And then, so if we focus on near-death experience, we can see that there is how to say, so one level, one component is at is higher level, so internal awareness. So the person is experiencing a very rich mental experience, while those two other components, wakefulness and connectedness, are at their lower level. If we focus on drug-induced hallucination, we can see that those three components are, again, quite high, and between, of course, there are plenty of situations, as we just talked about, where we can experience a near-death-like experience. For example, meditation, where we are awake and more or less connected to the environment, but there is also other conditions such as syncope, where the person is more or less unresponsive and also not awake, sorry. And so this permits to situate NDE among different types of altered states of consciousness. So this is a kind of consciousness framework which I think can help to understand NDE. And so far, you have to know that we don't know exactly what is happening when we experience a classical NDE. However, we have a few hypotheses based on empirical research, but also from other type of literature. So I will describe them in brief. So the idea is that if, for example, if we take the classical etiology of NDE, which is cardiac arrest, of course, there is a disruption of, during cardiopulmonary arrest and the period just before, the cerebral blood circulation is compromised. And so we can see a lower level of oxygen through the body, including brain tissue, and an accumulation of carbon dioxide too. And so we know that because notably of this prospective study, which show that people who report NDE do have higher level of carbon dioxide. And also there is a publication about syncope, where we see that in hypoxia, we can observe the emergence of a similar phenomenology. And so this, of course, can ultimately lead to a neuronal excitability as well as the release of neurotransmitter. And so, in short, there are a few publications suggesting that maybe at the proximity of death, the brain do not show a kind of disorganized brain activity, but rather a few studies in animal and humans do show specific transient surge of functional activity. So this has been first shown in rats and then recently confirmed, notably by a paper from this university led by Yimo Boring. Sorry for not saying well your name, and as well as another team that show that indeed there is at the proximity of death a global increase of functional connectivity, notably in gamma oscillation, which is known to be important for perception, learning, as well as information integration. So those studies are very important because we can then do the hypothesis that this is during this frame that people could experience NDE. Of course, we need more research to confirm or not that, and this is only the beginning, but this is very, very excited to see this peak of electrical spike in cardiac arrest condition. Other studies also suggest that if we stimulate some specific part of the brain, such as this one here is the temporoparietal junction, we can kind of induce an out-of-body experience. So this kind of study can help to understand NDE. If we stimulate the same region but in the other hemisphere, here on the left, we know that some people may experience a sensation of presence. So of course we can do a link here with meeting entity. Again, those kind of studies are limited, but still it's the beginning of the literature on the subject. And then, of course, here notably by using the psychedelic, we could now study to what extent some pharmacological action may play a role in the emergence of NDE, and notably some systems such as serotonin, noradrenaline, endorphin, dopamine, etc., seems to play a role, notably in the emergence of this positive feeling, as well as in the encoding of this memory, which seems to be very vivid while the person was in a critical situation. So these are the main hypotheses, but further empirical study are needed. And then, of course, there is some psychological theory which are non-mutually exclusive to the previous neurophysiological theory that I just talked about. And one of the major theory suggests that NDE would be a dissociative state, permitting to focus on an internally generated, more peaceful reality to cope with this life-threatening situation. And this is interesting because we know that those dissociative states may be even more likely to emerge when the sensory bottom-up information is disturbed, which seems to be the case in critical conditions such as cardiac arrest. Why do we experience such an experience? With my colleague, we attempt to suggest hypotheses on the why, if we can. So the idea is that there is this universality of NDE. So it seems that every part of the world include people who experience NDE, and so. So the idea is that there is only a few publications about that, but we can see, for example, publication from Asia, North America, South America, in Africa, Europe. And so basically, the idea is that they report those prototypical features. However, it seems that culture can have some influence. Notably, we observe that in Europe and North America, the people seems to interpret the experience of frontiers, a point of no return, as a tunnel. While in India, there is a publication showing that this frontier could be rather interpreted as a river, which is important in the India culture. So here, this is just an example because actually there are very few publications on the subject, but the idea would be soon to do a large-scale study to really investigate the cultural influence in this experience. And so basically the idea is that based on this universality, we do the hypothesis with my colleague from the University of Copenhagen and from the Coma Science Group that thanatosis could be the evolutionary foundation of NDE. So we know that thanatos, this death fainting, is observed in plenty of species. So this seems to be a highly preserved behavior. And so we here do the hypothesis that thanks to the greater sophistication of the brain, notably the evolution of the language, this behavior could have evolved into a richer perception in humans. However, it is worth mentioning that we here do the hypothesis that NDE could be, the survival benefit of NDE could be observed in a predatory situation. However, for NDE in non-predatory situation, the benefit could not be that obvious. And so we think that this purpose, this biological purpose won't be associated with those non-predatory conditions. We actually know today that some behaviors, such as laughing while being tickled, are actually behavior that were highly preserved, but whose benefit cannot be observed or are really restricted to certain situations. So this is the first time that this has been suggested, and of course we need more and more study to confirm or not this hypothesis, if we can confirm empirically this hypothesis. And so, yeah, there is research that need to be done. And I will end with changes, consecutive changes. So this is what one of the particularity of NDE is that people often report very very important change in terms of behavior, but also belief or attitude, or belief about the world, the way they see the world, death, etc. So in general, what is reported is that there are a few consequences that we can consider as positive, such as a decreased fear towards death, also a more spiritual attitude, etc. While a few negative ones have been also observed, such as the difficulty in integrating the experience into their current lives. Also, the ineffability have been highlighted. It's very difficult for most of them to describe such an intense and life-transforming experience. Again, here, a few authors have done the parallel with psychedelic, and basically what we see is that most of the consequence seems to be the same as reported after psychedelic. Notably, we can see here in a large-scale study, online survey, that people who report who experience NDE, it's this non-drug group, which also include actually near-death-like experience, versus people who took psychedelic. They do show the same kind of decreased fear of death. And we recently, with my colleagues from the Imperial College London, conducted this survey here in people who experience both classical NDE and at least one psychedelic experience. And basically, we also find the same, and we find overlap in terms of the supernatural attribution of the experience, the degree of psychological insight gained after each experience, etc. So this is really important, and I think, of course, for clinicians to be aware that people who experience such an experience can have really impressive, acute and enduring consequence. And so I would like to finish this talk with an ongoing study we are conducting in Liège. So with my colleague, we are actually conducting a prospective study in the resuscitation room of our hospital And in short, the idea would be to study any type of memory of patients who have been there in this resuscitation room. This will include cardiac arrest people, but also other type of critical situation, and we notably would like to test those out-of-body experience, to what extent people who experience an out-of-body experience can report memory of the environment. So far, only one study has studied this. However, we need a more rigorous setup in order to be sure or not that people who report memory from the environment are actual event or not. And so the idea here is that we will use also EEG, and then we would like to study to what extent we can or not reproduce recent finding of EEG in dying brain. We also, when the person will be in the room, we will display unexpected stimuli, such as some noise of bird singing, for example, and some atypical stickers that we put everywhere in the resuscitation room, so that we will be able to really test the memory. And the idea is that we will interview those people within 3 days upon recovery, when of course they are willing to participate, and we will follow them until 6 months to study the evolution of memory. This is the kind of study, I think, which is lacking currently in the field. I think simply because this is quite challenging to set up, and of course we need to be many researchers to work on that, and have a great collaboration with clinicians to not disturb their the safety of the patient. And so I hope that through this presentation, I show you how NDE are important for consciousness literature. I think that here, in brief, I think that here NDE show that in a critical situation where the person is unresponsive, NDE show that we can spontaneously experience a rich episode of disconnected consciousness. And to me, this means that those experiences are a kind of natural form of subjective experience. So we have to study that in consciousness human literature. And of course, a bit as psychedelic, near-death experience challenge the conventional way we perceive the world of subjective experience. We also see that there are reports that's more real than reality. So we clearly need to study this impression and try to understand how it is possible. And we also know that NDE generate important meaning, are typically life transforming. So obviously it is very important from a clinical point of view to understand it, to better accompany people who do experience such an experience. And recent evidence of empirical study do show that there is this peak of electrical activity in the dying brain. These are the first study on the topic, and I think this is really important to better characterize the signature of death. So basically that's it. I would like to thank you all for your attention. I would like also to take this opportunity to thank my colleague without whom this wouldn't be possible, and of course also people who accepted to share their experience. And here is my email address if you want to contact me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Masyaf. A fantastic lecture, covering such a wide range of topics from phenomenology to mechanisms. And so we have time to take a couple of questions, if you agree to that. Yes, right here, Janu.
Hi, thank you so much for the great talk. So I was interested in the experiment you are designing about the auto.
Do you want this maybe?
Thank you. Yeah, I was intrigued by the experiment you are designing about the out of body experience. So if let's say a patient see the sign or some symbols on the wall or somewhere, then but the photons from that sign didn't enter the eye of that patient. Then if your experiment like proves to be true or out of body experience like really happens, then how would you be able to explain it in current physical way of like explanation? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So this is a very interesting question. So the idea is that indeed, if we observe, if we can confirm that some people who do experience an out-of-body experience do recall some stickers or objects that are hidden, so really close to the ceiling where nobody can see them, I think this will question the whole consciousness literature, and I can not actually explain that in terms of neurophysiological mechanisms that we know today. However, I actually have the hypothesis that I don't expect to observe that, but I want to test it because we have to test it because we still don't know what is consciousness, what are those experiences. But here, more generally, the idea would be to also see to what extent people who experience an out-of-body experience will report some other event or details from the environment, not especially hidden or close to the ceiling, but rather from the environment. And this would be quite complicated to study because we here have to disentangle to what extent this really happened, but this would be possible with objective measures such as we use camera, etc. But we also have to study to what extent this can be also a reconstruction, a memory reconstruction, because, for example, it is difficult to say something about people who report having heard some beep, 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 you know, those kind of expected sound that we can find in resuscitation room. And that's why we want to use unexpected stimuli, sound, object, etc., so that we can know that if the person do recall a bird singing, either this is what the person really experienced in the room, and so this we can confirm it via notably the camera, etc., or this can be also, of course, a form of false memory, but we can clearly interview people to know to what extent this is a false memory or not. And yeah, I don't know if I replied to your question.
Can I do a quick? Yeah, thanks for your talk. It was great. A quick comment. It could be argued that our sense of reality could be a shared dissociation in certain respects. So, you know, to frame that issue of just a dissociation experience. But couple questions. The response that you described in terms of different people, the void, hellish, and inverse, was that correlated at all with a survey of the personality types, characterological types associated with that?
This is a very good question, and so far this hasn't been studied, but I really would like to do it because indeed, I was also quickly talking about that. I think that potentially the context may influence the experience, but also maybe some cognitive or personality trait. So for sure, this is something we should do. But so far, this hasn't been done.
Another quick question. The EEG, I was wondering about that, and that's what your current study is. Are you aware of any research that involved that a person was set up for EEG and had a near-death experience, so that there could be some data correlating that activity, brain activity, with that experience?
This is what we would like to do, indeed. But so far, to my knowledge, there is no EEG data available in the scientific literature. There are, of course, some paper discussing this. However, to my knowledge, we never had the EEG analysis showing that. But this is something I would like to study. Clearly, I think it's important. So, yeah.
Hi. So I read Dr. Grayson's latest book, After, I believe it's called. And to kind of piggyback with what was just said, he does mention a couple of instances, very, very select few instances where the person that experienced an NDE was under a way to monitor his heart and brain as well. And both showed that the heart had stopped, the brain had no activity whatsoever for an extended period of time. And after that, they did recall a very, very vivid NDE experience. So in the way I interpreted it, it was a little bit more of like supporting this idea that consciousness and brain are not necessarily one and the same. They might be kind of separate. But is there a possibility that this NDE is something that happens just immediately before something horrible happens, as you said, like the trauma response to cope with it and that kind of thing? Just like, as far as I understand, dreams can happen in like physically a short amount of time, when we're experiencing it, it's a very, very long period of time. So is that a possibility that it can just happen like just immediately before? And if so, would one be able to remember it after having that loss of brain function from not having oxygen in the brain and blood circulation and stuff like that? Would it be possible to recall it afterwards?
Thank you for your question. So you're right that this is actually a question that needs to be answered, is that we still don't know exactly when those experiences happen. So, for example, in the case of cardiac arrest, we don't know if it's like just before, during, or upon recovery. To me, the possibility is, all possibility are possible. And the idea is that also that's why I would like to do this study, and also I think the start, the few recent publications, notably from the team here, are the beginning to show that there is maybe a small frame where people can experience that, because we can see this electrical peak activity that seems to be kind of sufficient to experience such an experience. And I think regarding the memory encoding, that neurotransmitter release can play a large role into this, because notably of their action to the hippocampus and amygdala, etc. And so here, so my response is that we don't know, but to me this is clearly possible based on what we know about consciousness and the neurophysiology of humans.
Thank you for your very compelling lecture. It was a new experience for me. I feel like I'm in class learning something new. So one thing that I took away from some of your work was, in a subset of patients with NDEs, there is a heightened interoceptive sense. right?
There is what, sorry?
A heightened interoceptive sense, like a sense of awareness of internal states while being dissociated from sensorial experiences. Have you ever looked, or has anybody looked at sort of insular-centric activity, whether that is amplified, whether insular-centric networks actually play a specific role during NDEs? Because we know that the insula is really the sort of a center of a very large interoceptive network in the brain. So I'm just curious if you or anybody else has done these studies.
This is a very good question. Thank you. So far, this has not been yet studied properly. However, I think notably you are talking about the insula, but I can do a kind of parallel here, notably with the epilepsy literature, where we show that those patients with ecstatic epilepsy that seem to be associated with activity in the insula, notably, do report such phenomenology. So clearly, this is a piste. This is something we should study. And indeed, people report internal states, focusing on all internal world, while they are fully or partly dissociated from the environment. So I think that that could be an hypothesis to test that. But this is actually difficult. But maybe the next talk we also talk about that.
Or would be studies that have done manipulations of internal physiological states using cold stress, for example, which have specifically targeted insular function and interoceptive awareness.
Yeah, you are right. That's a great idea indeed. Thank you very much for your interesting comment.
I want to thank you again very much for the talk.